And welcome back to Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Scalina.
And I'm your other host, Matt Scalina.
And Matt, today we've got a phenomenal episode, but I'm going to warn you, it's a long one.
Yeah, but you know what? This flies by. Yeah, we got Michael Ferreira and Jon Bennest, principals at Urban Analytics.
Yeah, and the topic is just what's going on.
Yeah, well, okay. Maybe we should back up a bit. These guys just did their State of the Union at UDI, the Urban Development Institute, and they're fresh off this talk entitled What's Going On.
Right.
So we thought we'd have them on to find out exactly what is going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's based on a Marvin Gaye song. No?
I don't know if that's a reference.
Is that a reference?
Secret. Well, no, it is a reference.
Is that Marvin?
No, it is. I'm just wondering if that's their title.
No,
their title was based on the Marvin Gaye song.
I have no idea. But anyways, it's a great episode. We cover everything. We cover what's going on in the market now, how we got here, and then also what the future holds for the Vancouver real estate market.
And these guys, the interesting thing that I found, I mean, Michael's been on a couple times in the past, but really delving deep into the kind of regional dynamics,
right.
A lot on rents and what's going to happen in the rental market. They seem to have kind of really pivoted towards gathering data on rents in Vancouver. That's really interesting. What they buy right now and why. I mean, this is it's a great conversation.
Well, Urban Analytics, we should say, is the company that basically provides almost like the new condos, new product MLS to the development community.
They're the data collectors, right?
They're the data collectors, and they're doing constant deep dives into what's going on in very specific submarkets. So not only do you get kind of a holistic market picture today in today's episode, but you also get like a real specific deep dive on like areas like Surrey, Central Surrey,
Surrey City Center. Surrey City Center.
It's a long interview, and I'm not making any sense.
Well, hey, so they just left. No, but before we get to this, we should say two things. Right. One, we have a couple of Vancouverism, Larry Beasley Vancouverism books left. A couple.
We have a couple.
Right? So I don't know how much longer this is going to go.
We're still under 100 reviews.
We have 99.
Really?
We have 99 reviews right now. Okay. So, actually, no, there was one this morning. I think we got 100. I'm not counting who's counting, but we got 100. So we got reviews. You go over, and everybody that puts a review in is going to get drawn once a week for a Vancouverism book signed by Larry Beasley. These ones specifically have some really inspiring messages.
They do.
So how you get into this contest is you Google Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. On our business page, you hit review, you add a review, you get entered into the draw, and we will have a winner at the end of the interview today.
Right.
And then the other thing is, we got our live hangout coming up November 9th. That's the next one.
And we still have the hangout that we just did a few weeks back, which is live on YouTube. So you can check that out if you want to.
It lives on YouTube, but it was live.
It was. Yeah, it was live. Now it lives. But we also, this is exciting, the one on November 9th. So next episode, we're going to be talking about who's going to join us and then also what the topic is. So we're really excited. It's basically just an opportunity for us to hang out and talk about the things we want to talk about the market. And people can participate from the comfort of your own home.
That's it. Come have a beer November 9th, and to be announced next week, the topic.
Right. And without further ado, Matt, let's
Jon Bennest and Michael Ferreira. This one's fantastic.
Enjoy. Okay, so we're here with Michael Ferreira and Jon Bennest, both principals at Urban Analytics. How you doing, guys?
Fantastic. Doing well.
Thanks so much for taking the time today, guys. We've had Michael, you on a couple times, fan favorite, and this is your first appearance, so thank you very much for coming on. Can you maybe start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. Been in this business for longer than I'd like to admit, because it makes me feel really old, but over 25 years. The majority of that as a part of Urban Analytics, started as an employee and ended up purchasing the company. And have worked on the development side in Metro Vancouver for a while, but you know, in general, love this industry. There's no better place to be in this industry than in Vancouver. There's never a dull moment, as we've witnessed over the past several years.
Yeah.
And even when the market is slow, it's never dull. So every day there's something to look forward to.
And can you maybe talk just a little bit, because Urban Analytics is an interesting company. Can you talk about what you guys do?
We monitor the new multifamily home market in Metro Vancouver, and by that we track all of any activity, any sales activity that's happening at any condo and townhome project that's being developed, and we start tracking it right from the sale of the property or the purchase of the development property. We put the information into a web-based platform that we sell subscriptions to. We have 3 different products on that platform, one being one that tracks the land sales, and then we continue to monitor that property through the planning process. It then gets moved into our multifamily platform, which is condos and townhomes. And then we are also the only firm that monitors the new purpose-built rental market in Western Canada. So we monitor that here in Calgary and in Edmonton, where we also monitor the multifamily home market, condos and townhomes.
Excellent, excellent. And John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the industry for 15 years now. My start was working for Polygon Homes as their in-house analyst back in 2005. Worked with another developer, Mosaic Homes, learning the layout of the land out there as well too. 2 great veteran developers to work for. Then joined up with Mike in 2010, I believe. Yeah, and then basically Urban Analytics, when 2010 was around, was kind of more, the company was very much consulting based. So a lot of our work came from developers who are looking to build a specific project, and they're looking for best use recommendations on unit mix, pricing, that sort of thing. The biggest kind of transition with Urban Analytics from 2010 up to 2013 was that we kind of shifted our business focus over onto a consulting to a subscription-based platform model. So that's kind of been the biggest change for the company since then.
Why make that change to the subscription-based?
Primarily, well, just to kind of take a few steps back, Michael used to do this back in the 90s with a pre-technology era where you would go and you would take all the information and put it in a Microsoft Access database, and then you would print it out on basically a phone book size binder.
So it's basically as
like
thick as those
old,
2 books put together.
Yeah, like the old MLS, right?
Yeah. It felt really high tech when I put it on a disc and sent it out to our subscribers.
So
ahead of the curve.
Yeah. But we're starting to kind of see the shift in what our clients were looking for. In addition to consulting services, there's just a strong demand for having access to that information. Just imagine being a realtor if you didn't have access to your MLS platform and being able to search through sales listings, that sort of thing. And there's that need for that in the new home market as well too. So we're starting to kind of move into an era of I want this information and I want it now. With Netflix, changing the game that way, and we really do think that's the case in the new home market as well too. People want information and they want it at their fingertips. So that's kind of been the focus of our space, is to really service our clients and make sure that they have as much information as possible at their fingertips. In a nutshell, NHS Live is kind of like the MLS for the new home market.
Okay,
right on.
Yeah. So maybe just to start, we just got the election results last night. We got a Liberal minority government. Does this have any impact on the Vancouver real estate market in your guys' opinion? Positive, negative, not at all?
I don't think it'll have any immediate impact. I know Justin Trudeau introduced or suggested that he was going to introduce and implement a 1% national foreign speculators tax. What exactly that means, what it looks like, will be interesting to see once it rolls out. I think with a minority government, it'll be a little more difficult to get some of these, if it's a more controversial policy passed. So I think in the short term, I don't really think it's going to impact the market at all. It's a little unfortunate for the Alberta markets.
Right.
I think they were really hoping for that conservative government, and that's how they voted, and just from the energy sector and some investment in that. And so as a result, I think for the foreseeable future, we're seeing sort of flat conditions there.
Right.
So very recently, you guys were at UDI, Urban Development Institute, and Michael, you kind of give a State of the Union there, or I guess both of you do give a State of the Union there, show up to their breakfast once a year. This year it was entitled, What's Going On, right? Mm-hmm. What is going on in the Vancouver market as far as you guys see?
Well, the presentation was an hour long. I think I had 95 slides in the presentation, and that was really just a function of how much is going on. There's a lot to talk about in the market. I started out the presentation with a couple of slides from the past 2 years that sort of described what we saw going on. So from 2 years ago, when the market was really strong and it was really hopping, when I gave the presentation 2 years ago, I suggested that we were seeing a few headwinds in the distance. And then I referenced a related slide that I presented at last year's luncheon that showed some storm clouds on the horizon.
I feel like that's right around the last time we had you on the show.
Correct.
I remember talking about the storm clouds.
Yeah. So this year I was trying to think of a similar slide that would portray or illustrate what was going on in the market this year. And the best I could come up with was a poop emoji with a storm emoji. So you can figure out what that translates to.
A poop storm.
Yeah.
Better than a poop and a fan emoji.
Correct. Yes. So yeah, just the presentation focused. I sort of broke it up into three different parts. One was the all the various government policies that have been introduced over the past couple of years and how those have impacted the market overall in terms of the taxes that all of us, not just foreign buyers, but a lot of us have to pay when we purchase a new home. On the development side, the taxes that they have to pay when they purchase a development property, they're treated just like a residential property is. So, if you're buying a development property for over $3 million, you're paying a 5% PTT on that. You're also paying the school tax on that. You're also paying potentially the empty or the vacant land tax, until you start your rezoning process. So it's added a lot to the cost of a home for both consumers as well as for the development community as well. Focused a lot on the rental market this year because, again, we see a significant amount of demand coming, but nobody seems to be feeling the urgency to actually approve and get more rentals built in this market. And I think as a result, we're going to see some massive spikes in rent rates over the next several years. And then ended off with just having a look at what was going on in the condo market, how all of that impacts that, what the status of the multifamily market is today. And again, from a supply perspective, in 3 or 4 years, because of the lack of new launches that we've seen for new high-rise projects in the market this year, I think we're going to be in a bit of a supply crunch in 4 or 5 years from now. And then ended off with a bit of a wish list for what I'd love to see happen over the next few years in the industry.
Wow. So in kind of thinking, just maybe we want to dive into a lot of those, those topics, but just maybe as a broad kind of context, are we in a good place based on all these changes? And I mean, obviously with the poop emoji and the storm emoji, I have a feeling I know your answer, but where are we at? Can you kind of tap into maybe just the current state of the market?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and I'll let John give his opinion on this as well. I think we could be in a much better place than we are currently. I think a lot of the policies that government has brought in has made it a lot more difficult to get projects built, to make projects viable. The reason that a lot of the high-rise projects that were slated to come onto the market and start marketing earlier this year haven't is because of the viability. So, revenues have come down. We sort of estimate that prices are off overall across the market by about 15% from the peak of late 2017, early 2018. Construction costs are still where they were. They haven't come off hardly at all. The tax load and fee load and development cost load on developments has just continued to go up. So it's made it challenging for developers to get projects off the ground and bring them to market. Mm-hmm. So,
and what are you guys seeing in terms of and jump in at any time, Jon, but in terms of, so it's definitely more challenging from the developer side to make the projects viable, right? In terms, presumably sales obviously is a key component to that, but what are we seeing there on the new construction front?
Yeah, I can kind of jump in here. It's actually been quite an interesting market from the perspective that over the past decade we've been tracking new home sales on a quarterly basis, and typically north of the Fraser location, so Vancouver, Burnaby, North Vancouver, Tri-Cities, they typically outperform Fraser Valley submarket sales-wise, just based on their amount of locations, project selling, access to amenities, rapid transit, that sort of thing. And typically they are higher priced than locations in the Fraser Valley like Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford. And what we've kind of been seeing lately is more of a reversal in sales. More expensive locations, ones that would typically attract that Chinese buyer, have not been seeing as much positive sales responses. And conversely, we've also been seeing a lot of positive sales activity in the Fraser Valley. So, especially in the condominium market, where the wood frame condominium market, where it's really affordable relative to north of the Fraser, you're still seeing a lot of mom and pop investors, young first time buyers just seeking that affordable product. So the past couple of quarters is the first kind of time in the past 10 years of tracking where we're actually seeing more sales happening in suburban locations, Surrey, Abbotsford, that sort of thing, and where and we suspect it. A lot of it is due to the fact that it's still end users who are really driving our real estate market here, and a lot of the taxation policies that were put into place over the past year, 2 years, largely are trying to really negatively impact the luxury sector of the market, foreign purchasers, really purchasers who have had the largest impact on the luxury and high-end sector of the market, which are typically locations north of the Fraser, west side of Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, West Vancouver, locations that would typically attract that affluent buyer. We're not seeing as much activity there, and a lot of the demand is being pushed south of the Fraser right now.
That's kind of an incredible or an interesting component. Like, we often think of well, at least when we're discussing how the market has worked previously, that downtown's kind of the epicenter. It's like the pond, you drop the rock in downtown, it kind of emanates out. But it sounds like if we're looking at some sort of recovery starting now through the oncoming years, it sounds like what you guys are seeing is actually almost the reverse, that it's going to be south of the Fraser that's driving that recovery.
Correct. And it's largely, my opinion on this is largely based on taxation policies rather than fundamental, from the perspective that, downtown, typically a lot of purchasers of new condominium projects there would maybe be from another country, who would see that as a location to buy a nice pied-à-terre unit,
right?
Spend 4 months of the year here, and then leave it empty for anywhere between 6 and 8 months of the year. That purchaser is really being attacked with the new policies, the vacant home tax, speculation tax, school tax, and others. So they're not really incentivized to buy in downtown Vancouver. So it's kind of like that buyer who's driving that is not really there right now.
I'm just thinking out loud with the like, we look at sales ratios generally in the sub-markets, and what you see right now, at least, is it seems like a lot of just local buyers, people that are moving through the market, either regular people, right? Their families are growing, or downsizing, death, relocation, that sort of thing. But what we see is a lot of pent-up demand and higher sales ratios in the lower price points of every market, right? So, I mean, it does kind of make sense that in the greater Vancouver area, where prices are lower, that you'd see quite a bit of an uptick. The interesting thing to me, though, is that where you're seeing a lot of the investment as well? So investors are still operating in these markets quite aggressively, from the sounds of things.
Yeah, and I mean, investors will move around the region, but at the same time, there's some investors who won't go to the Fraser Valley to purchase.
Right.
So and we hear anecdotally that they're starting to pick up the phone and call their realtors and say, hey, is there anything going on out there? Is there are any deals happening? So the fact that they're starting to wonder maybe we're approaching the bottom of the market, because I think that's what a lot of people were sitting on the fence waiting for. We hear that there's still a lot of money on the sidelines, and it's just kind of waiting. Nobody wants to buy before the market hits bottom. Now, having said that, it's always a bit of a risk to try to time your purchases and getting back into the market on the actual bottom of the market, because by the time the bottom is apparent, it's probably too late to get the really good deals.
Yeah. Well, and even from two thoughts here. One is with looking at sales ratios, at least in Vancouver over the last 3 months, it seems like we've actually picked up quite dramatically since the spring, right? Like I think September 2019 versus September 2018 was up 47% or something like that. So there seems like there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel, if just a little bit of light. But one thing I'm kind of more interested about, and this is maybe to either of you, is so building costs are high. Like we always look for gaps in the market in terms of what's prices on the east side versus the west side, or prices in Vancouver versus Burnaby. If those markets out there, like the prices in Surrey, say right now at $800 a foot or $850 a foot or whatever new construction is, like if that is a robust market, but there's still no sales happening in Vancouver, with the building costs and the costs of the land, what happens there? Like what does that look like?
That's where developers really are having a lot of conversations in terms of, do we go and test the market today based on where it is, where our revenues are? I think a lot of them are going back to their construction firms and asking them to sharpen their pencils. The challenge is everybody's still busy. Everybody's still building the projects that were sold in 2017, 2018. Now, the more forward-looking construction firms and GCs are going to be looking ahead and saying, if nothing launched this year, in a couple of years, we're going to be out of work. So, to get this work, maybe we should sharpen our pencils a little bit, go back to our trades and sub-trades and see if they can do any better on it. One of the other elements of all this is the REDMA, the Real Estate Development Marketing Act, which requires developers to file an amendment to the disclosure statement stating that they've obtained their building permit within 9 months of filing their disclosure statement. So that's a really small window. It's not a problem when the market is hot, as it has been for most of the past 10 years. But now if you've got a 400-unit project that you're launching, to try and get your pre-sale target within that 9 months is pretty challenging, and that's what's preventing a lot of developers from going ahead and launching, because it's a big risk if you don't get to that number and you have to cancel the project at that point. And that's the primary reason I think that we've seen a lot of developers postpone the launches of the projects.
Just moving ahead to kind of rentals here, your UDI presentation had kind of an interesting kind of the geography of the Lower Mainland with the rent per square foot that you could expect.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised at how high the rents were in, say, Coquitlam or Burnaby, at least in relation to East Vancouver, where we're East Van seemed to do particularly poorly on that from a landlord perspective, at the very least. Do you find that people are moving south of the Fraser or further out in terms of renters looking for, like, it strikes me, I guess to put it another way, it strikes me as Coquitlam's a cheaper buy-in, but the rents are higher than East Vancouver. It seems like there's a disconnect there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah. So with our database, I think just for full context of the values in East Vancouver, a lot of the newer purpose-built rentals in East Vancouver that we're tracking in our database are typically smaller infill sites that are wood frame construction, that are often built by non-branded developers. So in terms of the amenities that you're going to expect or the type of finishing specifications aren't necessarily as high as what you would see in a brand new concrete rental apartment building done by a branded developer. So I think in the case where if you saw our numbers for East Vancouver, a lot of it was due to in part where a lot of projects in the Norquay area along Kingsway corridor in a wood frame building may not be as high necessarily as what you would see in Mount Pleasant. If we probably focused on the Mount Pleasant area for new rental apartment buildings, they'd be significantly higher than what you'd see in Coquitlam and Burnaby. So before kind of going into that, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a reason for why we have a little bit difference in values. Typically in Burnaby, we don't really have a lot of new purpose-built rental buildings. So the ones that we're seeing are either located in Brentwood today, or they're going to be located in other locations like Lougheed or Metrotown. And you're going to see concrete high-rise projects where you're going to have awesome amenities in these buildings. But it is true. Over the past couple of years, it's been actually quite impressive to see what type of rental increases you've been able to see in locations like Coquitlam, most notably in the Burquitlam area, where having that new SkyTrain line open up really increased the ability to extract high rents in those locations where prior to that I don't think you would be able to achieve anything nearly as close to that. So we're really seeing a lot of increases in locations that have access to SkyTrain. And one of the reasons why you can do that is because as soon as you're on a SkyTrain line, you can really start to offer a smaller unit mix. Typically, if you want to do a studio unit or a junior one bedroom, you're more likely to get really a deep renter pool when you're located adjacent to a SkyTrain station.
Right.
You can do these small junior one bedroom studio units and get a pretty decent rent for them. They're tougher to do junior one bedroom micro units, studio units in locations that are not transit oriented. So those buildings will likely want to have a more one bedroom, two bedroom mix that's larger and would yield a lower rent on a per square foot basis.
Right.
So really SkyTrain is driving the potential for lower unit sizes and higher rents per foot.
It's crazy. Like I was just out at River Sky the other day in New West, and I mean that's a prime example of like junior one beds, basically bachelor units, getting almost comparable to bachelor units downtown, right? Like the rents are astronomical. And I think that's an interesting thing because we were talking before you got here about the differences in the areas. So I guess a lot of consumers or renters are after kind of easy access to the SkyTrain lines, smaller units and kind of more luxury buildings or concrete towers with rich amenities. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
That's the trend for sure.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's interesting, you go to other markets, even Calgary, the amenity packages that they offer are quite nice. And, we'll start to kind of catch up as our rental market becomes more competitive down the road. But ultimately, young renters are really looking for a really convenient location to live, be it an amenity that offers social opportunities for their pets, fitness amenities, that type of thing. Any opportunity to do as much as possible within their own complex or living environment is helpful to those renters. An example of a good building that we went to recently to check out was West Group did a rental project in the Brewery District in New Westminster, and their amenity space is pretty awesome. Not massive by any means, but offers tons of cool things like a dance class area, kitchen restaurant area, really cool fitness area, a lounge area. So I think renters are really looking forward to having that opportunity to do that in one building.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to add to what John was saying in response to your question on the difference between rents in Coquitlam versus East Van, the other factor there is what we're seeing is as new projects get released and have a leasing campaign that gets started, we see rents jump up. Coquitlam has had, there's one project coming out there soon that's going to be, $330 per square foot for a wood frame rental building. Wow. There's a project in New West that just launched about 4 months ago. It's a tower. They're averaging about $355 per square foot, and they've leased up 200 of the units that they have in the building. So East Van, we haven't seen a lot of new purpose-built rental added to the market recently. We do a lot of, good portion of our advisory advisory work these days is for rental projects that are being proposed and planned. And for East Van, we've been suggesting over $3 a foot for rents for projects, and that was based on projects that probably won't be completed for 3 or 4 years, and then you apply an inflation rate to that, and it's not long before you get to $350 or more a foot.
Right.
And just one of the unintended consequences of government policy, this is a perfect example where a year ago the provincial government eliminated the ability to increase your rents by 2% on top of the cost of living increase, the inflation rate. And so what's happened is building owners that are launching a new rental project know that they're not going to be able to increase their rents on an annual basis beyond the inflation rate. So they set their initial rents.
Yeah, they're not willing to take a little bit
pretty
of a
high.
cut,
Yeah,
right?
they're willing to take a longer period of time to absorb those units. As long as they can, assure themselves that they're going to get a higher rent. So again, it was meant to make things more affordable, but for new rentals, it's actually making them more expensive.
Right. It's interesting. It seems like just as a general, at least my kind of mental imagery of the taxation, the impact of all these new taxes is kind of a flattening of the market, right? That there's not the gradations of kind of rental prices are all coming closer together, and even on geographically and on prices in terms of what people are paying in the resale market, prices are coming together as well, right? Like that's the Dustin Woodhouse. He said that a long time ago on this show, but that soon enough everything's going to be $1 million.
Whether it's like a 1 bedroom in Coquitlam or a 1 bedroom downtown, they'll both be $1 million. I'm curious about rents and where we're heading as well, because I mean, obviously that's not great news for tenants, but you can imagine that rents in the next 1, 3, 5 years are probably trending upwards.
Yes,
it sounds that way, right? You just mentioned as we get more competitive, which anyway, the lack of, when you have people moving here and the job market being as strong as it is and improving, and that continues to happen, and we have a lack of purchasing, then that just results in more renting. So our vision for the future is in absence of an abundance of supply coming to the market in the next 2 to 3 years, which we're not necessarily seeing. If you look downtown, you look at how many cranes that are being that are up there for residential construction. There's really not that many. The majority of them are for office, which ultimately results in more jobs in downtown. So we see a rental market, especially near downtown, going up significantly. One of the things that we're telling people is don't be surprised to see significant increases in rents in and around downtown Vancouver within the next 4 or 5 years as a result of a lot of these tech jobs coming to the area, and a lack of new housing built around the area to support those jobs. Typically, a lot of these workers who are coming in, maybe if they're from other countries, working for Apple, Amazon, that sort of thing, they're not necessarily going to buy a new home in their first 2 years of living here. They'll typically want to rent, and these types of people will often want to they'll want to live fairly close to where they work. So our prediction is quite drastic rental increases over the next 3 to 5 years. That could change if we built more to accommodate for these people, but we just don't see it at least in what we're tracking right now.
It's funny because I mean a lot of people have been targeting like buildings like Spectrum and its proximity to obviously the new Amazon location, but you can imagine how downtown rents would increase with the amount of new jobs coming to the downtown area, right? I mean, everybody wants to be close to work for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I presented in my UDI presentation was looking at the downtown office market. So there's almost 4 million square feet of office space that's under construction right now. 60% of that has been pre-leased. I think it's 59%, so call it 60. 70% of those leases are by new users. So it's not a firm that's in another building that's moving over to this space. These are new users that are coming in, and they're either hiring workers here, of which there aren't a ton given our unemployment rate, or they're bringing workers into the market. So, that was just one of the demand elements that I presented that was going to be putting pressure on the rental market. And something that people forget, because I know we have some councillors on the City of Vancouver Council and in other municipalities that that they're suggesting that all this new rental is too expensive. Well, what happens is, yes, that rental is expensive because it has to be. It's expensive to build. You add on all the fees and charges that a developer has to pay to get it built. The GST that they have to pay on it, which is ridiculous. There's a promise that Justin Trudeau didn't keep in his last campaign. But those buildings fill up. So the people that fill up those buildings are typically people that were renting an older, cheaper rental product anyway. So if you're building that newer, more expensive product, you're relieving the pressure on some of the older, lower cost housing stock, which opens it up to people who can't afford that new product. So the bottom line is, again, to put it in perspective, we currently have in our database, I think, about 6,300 units, rental units, being contemplated. So going through the planning process, some hasn't even been applied for. It's just being contemplated at this point. So 6,300 units. Andrei Pavlov, the economic professor from the Beatty School of Business at SFU, he recently gave a presentation where he suggested that we need 7,000 new rental units just to reach 3% vacancy. So we don't even have that many being proposed at this point in the region. So that just shows you how far we have to go. And that's why, as John was referencing earlier, we see some really increased pressure on rents rising even further than they have.
Any projections in terms of where we might be in 3 years, 5 years?
On a price per square foot?
I mean, downtown we're now pushing $450 a foot. I can see us getting to $5.50, $6 a foot if this pressure continues. At some point, there's that sort of that point where people say, okay, it's actually cheaper to buy, so I'm going to buy. Where that point is, we don't know at this point.
Right.
Yeah. Well, right now, I think actually, if you consider the mortgage pay down and you have the down payment, in a lot of cases, it's a no-brainer to buy, right? Mm-hmm. Just where rents are.
Yeah, well, and that's, I think, why you see, in terms of sales ratios right now, under 700K downtown, like, it's a pretty robust market.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. The other consideration for a lot of these new tech workers that are coming in, if they're from out of the country, they're classified as a foreign buyer, so they're paying 20% to buy a condo anyway. So they're going to, the majority of them are going to rent. Mm-hmm. So.
Maybe switching gears a little bit, I was struck by, you also had a map in which you showed kind of at the peak what the pricing was and now what the pricing is, and there had been significant declines. One thing that, maybe I'll put it to you guys, which areas have suffered the most in this downturn?
I think Cambie Corridor, anything that's more oriented towards luxury product. Mm-hmm. That's where we've seen the biggest hit. Now, having said that, some of the prices that were shown on the slide of where the market is today were a bit of a guess, because we haven't seen any new project launch on the Cambie Corridor, for instance, for several months. Right. Downtown, we haven't seen a launch. Well, we saw one tower launch there this year that, the response has been, less than impressive. So it's tough to know exactly where the market is in some of these areas, but I would suggest, again, the reverse geographic recovery, the closer to the core has probably suffered more than moving out to the suburbs.
One thing that struck me was that it looks like North Van, Lower Lonsdale it just jumped out at me. It was $1,100 a foot at the peak. It's $1,100 a foot now, whereas, say, Burnaby was $1,200 at the peak and $980, I think, now. Like, North Van seems to have, it seems to have weathered the storm quite well.
Yeah, some of that is a function of who the buyers are. So Burnaby, for instance, Metrotown, Brentwood, they attracted a lot of investor buyers, non-Caucasian investor buyers. North Van has never been a strong market for the Asian buyer, the Asian investor. Mm-hmm. So, because that segment of the market, never really was a big part of the buyer groups that were attracted to product there, that market hasn't suffered as much as some products that, or some areas that attracts that buyer profile.
So in other words, I guess kind of the local end user markets are the ones that have kind of weathered the storm the best. Is that
Absolutely, yeah,
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question here. Any investor listening to this would listen to this idea where you guys see rents going, right? And it seems pretty exciting from the perspective of a landlord, not saying anything about the city or the renters or anything else. We'll leave that for somebody else. But from the perspective of a landlord, it seems very exciting. Yet I still have the poop storm emoji in my mind here. What is to come in terms of the actual the market here in terms of new construction and sales in, say, really 2020 and then beyond?
You want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, we're probably going to see a lot of developers bring product to market where they've bought the land 3 to 5 and beyond years ago, where the land base was the price of that was low enough such that they can afford to bring their prices down and still make a profit. So we're actually going to likely see a lot of launches where that's going to happen, and we're going to see some positive responses to the market there. An example was Vesta Properties launched a condo development in Langley this past weekend, and we're hearing anecdotally that they've sold over 60 units this past weekend, where this is a site that was purchased a while back. So, developers who have bought land a while back, they should be okay, and they'll be the ones bringing product to market. And the ones that can bring the product at prices that are attractive to buyers will do well. The challenge is those projects and developers where they bought the land maybe 1, 2, 3 years ago, up to that point. That's where, as Michael referenced, okay, they're going to have to maybe either test the market with their price and see how it goes, or, reevaluate what they're going to be doing going forward. So.
Interesting. Are you expecting an uptick in sales generally?
I think so. I think the general mood in the market is, okay, if there is that money that's been sitting on the sideline, eventually people want to put that to work for them. They don't want to just sit on it forever. So they're going to look for opportunities in the market. Yes, there are some opportunities with some of the projects that are completing now where people who had purchased them may want to sell them, and they may, even need to sell them in terms of, being able to get financing or that kind of thing. So there may be some value there, but I think a lot of investors are always looking ahead. So, some will prefer to take advantage of some of the deals that might be in the market today. Others will look at opportunities today that may give them an opportunity for appreciation in 3 or 4 years when the project completes. So right. Some people just prefer that difference. So I think the mood is just generally improved. I was saying at the start of the year, when we were seeing the monthly MLS stats come out and they were comparing to the first half of 2018. And I said, look, because we're always getting asked, hey, what do you see happening? When do you think this is going to turn around? And I said, let's wait till the second half of the year when you start comparing apples to apples in terms of market activity,
right.
Especially on the MLS side. And we're starting to see that, right? The first half of the year, you were seeing, 20, 30% drops in sales and prices from the same month a year earlier. Whereas now we're seeing increases in sales. The prices are still off. But, and I think that's where you see some of the activity recently with even some of the mom and pop investors who are looking at it and saying, now's a pretty good opportunity. There's some good selection out there. There's not a ton of urgency. Prices have come off by that much, but there's still some decent supply and decent selection. So let's go and have a look and see what's out there. And they're responding to that, as we see in some of the sales results that we're hearing about in the Fraser Valley and in some other areas.
Right. What do you see as any events or anything in the near future that you see as posing a big threat or an impact to the market?
I don't really see anything now that the federal election is over with. I think, there was uncertainty around that. And elections always present some uncertainty. So, unless we see a snap election provincially, if the NDP wanted to test the market and try to get a majority, beyond that, I don't really see anything significant happening. The budget always presents some uncertainty when that comes out in February, but we'll see what happens there.
And what areas are you guys excited about personally?
I'm excited about everything. Downtown Vancouver, Burnaby, Brentwood. They have
Nanaimo and Grant.
Nanaimo and Grant, absolutely. Yeah, you know what? I didn't even realize what they're doing there is it's a 4-lane street that they're actually changing to 2 lanes. I didn't even know this.
You know what's
Yeah.
you know what's amazing? I live right there, and I'm dealing with that right now. And
Yeah.
I've been trying. I know they were doing the gas lines a year ago, presumably for the increased population.
Yeah.
Or, that was my assumption. But Nanaimo's been under construction now for a long while, and it looks like it's going to dramatically be transformed with all that new development there.
Totally. So I think maybe, thinking outside the box in terms of what, cool could happen that could change the game real estate wise here is Uber and Lyft. I just want to see how that impacts everyone's lifestyle and where they want to live and what's most convenient and that sort of thing. Like I think of a person who lives in the Grandview Woodlands community as somebody who can, Lyft, Uber, go places, that sort of thing. So, I'm kind of excited to see what that's going to hold in terms of the future and how people are going to get around the region. I'm excited about kind of all the new kind of head offices. Lululemon's going to build a new head office, the new hospital, just new improvements that are going to help the region. I'm excited about SkyTrain, new improvements to transit that are going to make the region better. So anyone who's living in those locations or has real estate in those locations, we're all going to benefit from all these kind of new changes and improvements.
Right. And it helps that the city of Vancouver is calming every main arterial as well. Moving
There's
everything.
gonna be no
from-
cars.
There'll be no
within
4-lane.
You guys are definitely going to be walking over in a couple of years.
For sure.
Or scootering. Hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully we get the scooters.
Yeah.
You'll be on your bird.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have to ask about property types.
Well,
as well.
wait. Did Michael?
Did you answer that?
Yeah, I don't think you answered.
No, I'm excited about Surrey City Centre. Anything that's in a transit-oriented location, as John says. So I think Surrey City Centre, what's happening there with the university, with the employment that they're bringing, the tech jobs that they're bringing there. I think it's been taking a long time, and from looking and driving through the area, it's looking a lot better. The groundscape is still a little challenging when you're walking around and you go to get your coffee at McDonald's or Tim Hortons there. It's still a little bit challenging, but overall, I think it's improving and will continue to improve over time. I think the SkyTrain line that they're taking out to Langley will transform. Hopefully, they're able to take it all the way out to Langley, but that'll transform that area and that route. And we're already seeing that. There was a project by Dawson and Sawyer that launched recently, 4-story wood frame project that again, they were reporting 65 sales within a couple of weeks of launching. And that's a 5-minute walk from the future SkyTrain station. So there's lots happening there. I live in the district of North Van. I'm super excited about what's happening in the city of North Van. The district of North Van is a basket case for the next while until we get a change in council or a change in attitude by the current council. But the city of North Van, if you haven't been down to the shipyards lately, and it's amazing. It's a destination now.
Right. Yeah.
So, Friday nights in the summer when they have their food truck festivals, and now they've got the new shipyards building that's open, new hotel, new restaurants that are opening up. It's just an amazing place to go and visit.
It is. I think that's why it's still $1,100 a foot, right? Like
Yeah.
anyone who hasn't been down there for a while, it's like, wow, this is a great spot.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We hear from the salespeople that are selling those projects is that a lot of their buyers, or a fair number of their buyers, are actually coming from West Van, which would have been unheard of before. It was like, somebody from Kerrisdale thinking about moving east of Cambie. It just would never happen before, right? So whereas now you're actually seeing, because of the lack of any options, reasonable options in West Van for downsizing, they're looking at Lower Lonsdale and saying, hey, this is actually pretty nice down here.
Yeah, if you don't want to live in a 1970s building.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So maybe just before we get to property types, just because there was two very different answers there. If, say, you had up to $1 million to invest right now, 2 questions for both of you. North of the Fraser or south of the Fraser? And would you buy now or 9 months from now?
It's like a choose your own adventure book.
Okay, I'm going to cheat.
Okay.
I'm going to say if you were to buy now, I'd buy south of the Fraser. But my preference, because I live north of the Fraser and I'm an investor and I just want to keep my rental properties closer to where I live,
Right.
I would say north of the Fraser.
Vancouver. No, Surrey's great. It's if you have $1 million and you put it in something, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So no matter where you put it, it's going to be good for you. So sometimes you get asked that question, oh, is this better than that? The process of just doing it and investing, even if it's in Richmond or Burnaby or Surrey, if you kind of continue to do that, it'll work out for you in this area, I think. So I like Vancouver, but I also like those other locations. I like Surrey, I like North Vancouver, Burnaby, everything. So, and 9 months from now.
9 months from now.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Vancouver 9 months from now.
Huh. I actually, we've talked a lot on this show about just Vancouver right now with a little bit of downward pressure on pricing. There's some great opportunities in the city of Vancouver to get into the condo market at comparable price points further out. Why not Vancouver? It kind of seems, in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
If the product's good.
I've been telling people, as I've said, who ask, when is a good time to buy? Now is the best time we've had to buy and get into the market for the past 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
You've got way more selection. You've got competing projects on the market. You can take your time and go and look at different projects that are out there and make an informed decision. Whereas, if you think back to 2016, 2017, where, projects were sold out before grand opening.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see a little bit of that now, even out in the Fraser Valley with some of these recent launches where, you're getting to grand opening day and 60% of the units have already sold. So I think there's a lot of opportunities both on the new home side and on the resale side.
So we've seen sales volume increase. Prices have remained relatively static for the last month or two. Mm-hmm. Do you guys see any further softening on the prices?
I think the luxury sector of the market, just because we haven't seen anything launch there
right.
for such a long time, I think there could be some further softening there. I think any area where we haven't seen a launch for a while is probably those areas that you're probably going to see some softening in prices when the next projects come out.
Right.
And it just want to touch on property types. Is there a property type that you guys are excited about? And I guess this is
for me, residential is what I know. So it's more about focusing on what you know and what can be your core expertise.
Right.
In Vancouver, it's actually when the residential market's been down, the big investor market actually that's been hot right now is light industrial or office industrial in Mount Pleasant. It's been
Sure.
one of the hottest markets in Vancouver. I myself don't know much about it in terms of the space, so I kind of stick to residential, just because that you're always going to have always have a need to live somewhere. So I'm just keep it simple that way. But I'm always excited about residential. Like I don't see any technology coming in the next 30 years that's going to make living somewhere obsolete. So
right. And not to put, I was joking about the studio, but seriously, what would you be buying if residential, anything from single family down to studios? What would you guys be looking at right now as the best investment?
Yeah, depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for capital appreciation, the taxation policies aimed at cooling the luxury sector have really kind of hammered that market. So it's really the best opportunity right now to buy something luxury, like a single family house.
West Vancouver.
Yeah.
$14 million.
Those are where the best deals have been happening. So really, these taxation policies have resulted in this, this side of the market cooling off and
right.
great opportunities there. Maybe there is a house that was, worth $10 million that's now asked $6. Yeah. So that's where you're seeing the biggest kind of downside. So from a capital, appreciation perspective, that's probably where you're going to see a big swing over the next, if you buy something at a deal today, over the next 10 years. But yeah, when it comes to, cash flow return, great locations, smaller units where you have a higher rent yield per square foot, and your maintenance costs are fixed, that's probably where you're gonna kind of see the best return on your cash is an opinion that I have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point about like West Vancouver, but even in the entry level price points in an area like West Vancouver where you're seeing houses that you can renovate or view lots that are selling on comparable price points to East Vancouver. It, for a large lot, and it blows your mind to see that, right?
Well, that's the ironic thing is it's made really expensive real estate, more affordable for people who can afford really expensive real estate. In terms of all these policies impacting affordability, it's really that sector of the market
who's benefited.
Exactly.
Right?
Sure.
It's tricky. Yeah. And Michael, what would you be buying right now?
I would agree with John. I think it really depends on what your goal is. If it's capital appreciation, as John was suggesting, I think you look at what part of the market offers the best value right now, and I think it's the larger, higher priced product. I would still be looking under $3 million because I don't want to deal with the school tax or the PTT. And then if you're looking to hold and rent it out, I think a 1-bedroom, 1-and-den unit, a studio unit even is always going to give you the best yield relative to what you're going to pay for it.
Right. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. But we got this segment called the 5-Wire. We've had you on before, Michael, and you've participated. Can you guys stick around for that?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. Well, what is the first question, Matt? Because
I feel like I haven't done this in so long that you're making me nervous
last
here.
Episode. But what's your favorite area in Vancouver? And we'll start with you, Michael.
Right now, I'd say it's Lower Lonsdale in North Vancouver.
All right. And John?
It's a tie. Kitsilano, and my hometown now is Ladner. So.
Oh, wow.
Moved out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's
sunny. That's sunnier out there. Sunny ways out there.
sunny days. Yeah. It's quite good.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Favorite bar or restaurant in Vancouver?
Mine is Tavola in the West End, on Robson Street, just west of Denman.
Right.
I'm a simple guy. Bob likes Thai food.
Oh, nice. There's a new one in Strathcona Village.
Strathcona Village has a Bob Likes Thai food coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever even actually eaten at Bob.
The one on Main Street, right? Main Street corridor, closer to Little Mountain.
Yeah, there's one on Main Street and then one on Granville and Broadway.
It's good. It's always packed. They're always busy there. It's good food.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm literally forgetting our questions. This is embarrassing.
Secret. I think we've all forgotten them. Where is the first place that you bring someone from out of town?
If they've never been here before, I've got to take them to Stanley Park.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Seawall.
Okay, here they are. What piece of advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Invest in real estate.
Okay. John?
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, but I can't think of anything else. That would probably be it. For me, if you can get in as early as you can, that's, you think that it's not possible, but if you can get in as early as you can, do it, and your 40-year-old self will thank you.
All right. And what is something you've purchased for under $500 recently that's had a positive impact on your life?
Wow, that's a hard one.
I think we got to increase that budget because we're getting like answers now. It's like Pocket Square. Like what?
I would say a new iPhone, but that's way over $500 now.
Let's say 1,000. We'll bump it up.
It's starting today.
$1,000.
Yeah, you know what? I bought a new monitor for my desk, so I've now got 2 monitors plus my laptop. That's changed my work life.
You can't go back after that.
No.
It's amazing. I bought one too, and it just is blank. I don't.
You don't even use it.
Yeah, I'm the guy. I'm like you with the Apple AirPods.
I'm the only one who doesn't use that doesn't rave about their AirPods. I think it's cool technology, but I haven't used them really. But
you got one, John?
No.
No. Something you bought for under $1,000.
The recent one is a Vitamix blender.
Oh yeah,
I use it every morning, and it's pretty. It's like an industrial blender basically that you have in your house. So it's my favorite.
We both have those on the counter.
Yeah. You can literally get water from a stone. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for your time, guys. That was as always, Michael, and it's great to have you, John. That was a fantastic conversation. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, and how can people find out more about Urban Analytics and what you're doing?
Just go to urbananalytics.ca. NHSlive.ca is our subscription database platform, but that'll put you in touch with us if you want any more information on that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again.
Right on.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
So there you have it, folks. Our discussion with Michael Ferreira and Jon Bennest from Urban Analytics.
Matt, I was taking notes the entire time. I've got my whole to-do investor list just listed right here.
You know
I'm
what?
ready to go.
We
I've
filmed
got my
it,
goals
Adam.
for
We
2020.
know that you weren't actually doing that. You forgot we're actually filming.
I wasn't even holding a pen. I wasn't even holding a pen. But I got mental notes.
There's a lot to think about, a lot to unpack there.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like there was so many takeaways there. So it was a great episode.
Yeah, and Michael, past guest, fan favorite, and Jon Bennest, new fan favorite.
No kidding,
I'm gonna yeah. Well, not really.
I guess it's his first time on, so he's not.
Yeah,
a sleeper.
not really a
Yeah, but
sleeper.
it was very.
He hasn't gone overlooked. He's just seen.
That's right.
Yeah,
Finally,
exactly.
on the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. Well,
What else do we got?
What else do we got? We got the winner of Vancouverism. That's Larry Beasley's signed book.
Right.
You can see them in front of us here if you're watching on YouTube. Secret. Do we got a winner?
And do we got a drum roll? No, we don't.
Maybe not. Maybe no drum
But
roll.
Secret,
This whole
just,
YouTube thing is
give it
really
to us.
complicating stuff.
The winner is Helen Chen.
And we'll hear the applause from the live studio audience, and we'll take it from here, Matt.
Wait, what does Helen say?
She says, so informative and actually fun to listen to as well. Relevant and timely. Keep it up.
Appreciate it. So,
Wow, thank you so much, Helen. Well, get in touch. We got a book. It's on the desk right now for you. And congratulations.
Yeah, Matt. And what else do we got coming up?
What else do we got? We got our live event November 9th. Head over to YouTube where you can click an alert within the last week.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell, subscribe, you'll see it. Come have a beer November 9th. That's going to be a great talk. We also got VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com. That's our website. You can head over to our website where you'll find resources like private client services.
And Matt, if you are not using PCS, you are standing still while the rest of us power walk by. You get sold prices, days on market. You basically get realtor level information at your fingertips. It's free. It's the best resource out there, and it's available on our site. And really, I mean, we have so many accounts set up for all of our clients and all of our listeners. A lot of our listeners have accounts, but we use it ourselves to monitor the market. It is the best.
This is the way we monitor the market. If you're not using it to search Vancouver real estate, you're doing it wrong. Also, spoke to somebody yesterday concerned about taking up our time.
Not a concern.
Not a concern. We got all the time in the world for PCS.
Yeah. You're interrupting.
accounts.
You're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah, right. That's exactly what it looks like. So get in touch at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com. We also got the Live Wire, our weekly newsletter. We got the stats going out. We got sales ratios going out. We got deal of the month. We got assignments. We got it all.
We do.
All right. So
there's no reason you shouldn't be hanging out on our site, VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com, or our YouTube channel, VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
This is exciting.
And we are also coming live from the Bento Box, we got to say. And we're hanging out in the Bento Box today. RameyFilms.com. But the Bento Box is not only where we eat sushi, but it's where we film our podcast.
That's right.
And it's a great space.
Look around.
Look around.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. If you want to talk about this or anything else, give me a call, 778-847-2854, or Matt at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
Or you can try me at 778-866-4574, or Adam at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
We also got that secret line.
Info at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
And if you're Agadashi tofu of the Bento Box.
He's the Agadashi tofu. He's also, head over to YouTube if you want to see what secret looks like.
He's a little softer than Agadashi. No, come on. I meant in your heart. Have a good week.
Take care.